Daniel Madison arrived at Denali National Park on June 7, 2023. According to park records, the 34-year-old software engineer from Seattle checked in at the Wilderness Access Center at 9:17 a.m. The attending ranger, Sophia Coleman, processed his backcountry permit request. "He seemed well prepared," Coleman later stated in her official report. "He had all the required equipment, bear-resistant food containers, and detailed knowledge of his intended route." Madison's permit authorized a 7-day solo expedition through Zone 19, a remote section of the park approximately 37 miles from the nearest road access point. Coleman noted that Madison presented as an experienced backpacker with 4 previous Denali expeditions documented in the park's visitor database. Weather conditions on June 7th were recorded as optimal for backcountry travel. The National Weather Service data indicated clear skies with temperatures ranging between 48 degrees and 62 degrees. Wind speeds remained below 10 mph throughout the day. Precipitation probability was listed at 5%. Park officials confirmed that Madison's planned route involved no river crossings exceeding Class 2 difficulty, and wildlife activity reports showed no unusual bear concentrations in Zone 19. The terrain, while challenging with elevation changes of approximately 3,200 feet over the course of the planned 43-mile loop, contained no technical climbing sections that would require specialized equipment beyond what Madison carried. Madison's final documented human contact occurred at the Zone 19 trailhead parking area. Kevin Harlan, a seasonal park employee responsible for trailhead monitoring, observed Madison performing final pack adjustments at 10:42 a.m. He double-checked his map, adjusted his trekking poles, and headed out on the trail, Harlan reported. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Surveillance footage from the trailhead camera positioned to monitor visitor compliance with backcountry regulations captured Madison's departure. The timestamp on the footage read 10:47 a.m. The image quality, while sufficient to identify Madison, did not provide clear detail of his equipment or demeanor beyond confirming his presence on the trail. Madison's intended itinerary, filed with his permit application, outlined a counterclockwise traverse of the Toklat Basin Loop with designated camping locations for each of the 6 nights. His emergency contact was listed as his sister, Emily Madison Reynolds, residing in Portland, Oregon. The emergency protocol sheet included his medical insurance information, blood type, O positive, and notation of no known allergies or medical conditions requiring medication. The satellite phone registered to Madison showed no outgoing or incoming communications after his departure. The device was later determined to have remained powered off throughout the duration of his disappearance. When Madison failed to return on June 14th as scheduled, park procedure dictated a 24-hour grace period before initiating search protocols. On June 15th at 9 a.m., Ranger Coleman contacted Emily Madison Reynolds, who confirmed she had received no communication from her brother. At 10:15 a.m., Incident Commander Teresa Alvarez authorized activation of Search and Rescue Protocol 7B, designating the operation as DANPS 2023-116. The initial response team consisted of 2 ground teams of 4 rangers each, 1 helicopter unit with thermal imaging capability, and 1 K-9 team specializing in human tracking. The primary search area encompassed 167 square miles, focusing on Madison's planned route and potential deviation zones based on topographical analysis. Weather conditions during the initial 72-hour search period deteriorated significantly from those present during Madison's departure. National Weather Service data indicated 3 consecutive days of intermittent rainfall totaling 2.7 inches, with visibility frequently reduced to less than 1 mile. Ground temperatures dropped to 38 degrees overnight, with wind chill factors reducing the effective temperature to approximately 29 degrees. The helicopter unit managed only 7.4 hours of flight time during this period due to safety limitations imposed by the weather conditions. Ground teams covered 41% of the high-probability terrain in the first phase of the search operation. The tracking dog, a German shepherd named Ranger with 7 years of SAR experience, followed Madison's scent approximately 11.2 miles along the planned route before losing the trail at a rocky plateau where water runoff had likely eliminated any remaining scent particles. The last confirmed evidence of Madison's presence was discovered 13.7 miles from the trailhead, a small piece of reflective tape matching the brand used on Madison's backpack, caught on a dwarf spruce branch approximately 3 feet above ground level. The GPS coordinates of this discovery were logged as 63 to 2417 N 150 to 52 9.8 W. On June 20th, with no additional signs of Madison discovered despite expanded search parameters, Incident Commander Alvarez transitioned the operation from rescue to recovery status. This reclassification allowed for adjusted resource allocation and search methodologies more appropriate for locating remains rather than a potentially responsive subject. The decision followed consultation with SAR statistician Dr. Robert Chen, who calculated the survival probability at less than 3% based on exposure duration, weather conditions, and the absence of any emergency signal activation. The search continued until June 28th, when deteriorating weather conditions and resource limitations necessitated suspension of active field operations. In total, the search involved 28 personnel, 3 K-9 teams, 142 hours of ground search time, 22.7 hours of aerial search time, and covered approximately 73% of the designated high-probability zones. The operational cost was later calculated at $217,853. The case remained open but inactive, with Madison's status changed to missing, presumed deceased, in the National Missing Persons Database on July 12, 2023. Emily Madison Reynolds authorized the release of her brother's dental records, DNA profile, and medical information to relevant databases to facilitate potential future identification. In her statement to park officials, she described her brother as methodical, safety-conscious, and unlikely to take unnecessary risks. She reported no concerning changes in his behavior or mental state prior to the trip and confirmed he had no known personal or professional problems that might suggest intentional disappearance. His financial records, reviewed with family permission by investigating officers, showed no unusual activity. His last transaction was a purchase at the park's general store, a topographical map and 2 energy bars, recorded at 4:37 p.m. on June 6th, the day before his departure. The search for Daniel Madison had officially ended. The wilderness had claimed him, adding his name to the list of those who ventured into Denali's vast expanse and never returned. Exactly 1 year and 17 days later, on June 24, 2024, wildlife biologist Carla Menendez was conducting a wolverine population survey in a remote section of Zone 22, approximately 6.8 miles east of Madison's planned route. While traversing a talus field at coordinates 63 degree to 2633 when 150 to 4322.5 W, she observed what initially appeared to be an unusual rock formation against a large granite boulder. Upon closer inspection through binoculars from a distance of approximately 120 yards, she recognized it as human remains in a standing position. Following protocol, Menendez retreated from the area, marked the GPS location, and contacted Park Dispatch via satellite phone at 1:42 p.m. Ranger James Whitehorse and forensic specialist Dr. Elaine Harper reached the site at 3:27 p.m. via helicopter. Their initial assessment confirmed the presence of human remains in an unusual configuration. The body was found in an upright position, leaning against a granite boulder measuring approximately 12 feet in height and 8 feet in width. The remains were partially mummified and frozen, preserved by the combination of low temperatures, desiccating winds, and the particular microclimate created by the surrounding rock formation. The distinctive red Gore-Tex jacket and black backpack visible on the remains matched the description of items carried by Daniel Madison. The position was unlike anything I've encountered in 15 years of recovery operations, Whitehorse noted in his official report. The subject was oriented facing outward from the boulder, in what appeared to be a standing position, with the back and shoulders braced against the rock face. The legs were extended forward at approximately a 15-degree angle from vertical, with feet planted on the ground as if the individual had been standing and simply leaned back against the rock. Whitehorse's report further detailed that the right arm was positioned across the chest while the left arm hung at the side. The head was tilted slightly upward, with the face oriented toward the sky at an angle of approximately 30 degrees from horizontal. A preliminary examination conducted by Dr. Harper at the site documented no immediately apparent injuries consistent with a fatal fall or animal attack. The clothing showed minimal disruption, though weather exposure had caused significant degradation of the outer layers. The backpack remained secured to the body with both shoulder straps and the waist belt fastened. A subsequent inventory revealed that the pack still contained approximately 200 calories of emergency rations, a first aid kit with supplies largely intact, 8 ounces of water in a partially consumed 32-ounce bottle, a satellite phone, confirmed to be Madison's, with battery depleted, and standard survival equipment including a knife, fire starter, and emergency blanket. The recovery team photographed the scene from multiple angles before carefully removing the remains using standard protocol for frozen recovery. The body, still in a rigidly preserved posture, was secured in a specialized transport container and airlifted to the park's forensic facility at 5:43 p.m. Dr. Harper noted that the remarkable preservation of the remains in an upright position presented an unusual forensic situation that would require specialized thawing procedures to prevent tissue damage that might obscure evidence. Park Superintendent Raymond Wilson authorized a reopening of investigation, DANPS 2023-116, at 7:15 p.m. that evening. Detective Laura Shepard of the National Park Service Investigative Services Branch was assigned as lead investigator. Her initial case notes questioned the substantial deviation from Madison's planned route, the unusual body position, and the fact that the satellite phone, while inoperable due to battery depletion, showed no signs of attempted use. The initial phase of the renewed investigation focused on determining how Madison had traveled approximately 6.8 miles east of his intended route through extremely challenging terrain. Topographical analysis conducted by NPS geologist Dr. Martin Chen identified no natural features that would logically channel a lost hiker in that direction. The route between his planned path and the recovery location crosses 3 ridgelines and 2 drainages, Dr. Chen reported. It represents a deliberate traversal of challenging terrain rather than an accidental deviation. Weather station data from June 2023 indicated that visibility in the region had been severely compromised by fog and intermittent precipitation for 4 of the 7 days Madison would have been hiking. Meteorologist Diana Frost calculated that daytime visibility would have been reduced to less than 100 feet for approximately 37 hours during that period, with nighttime visibility effectively 0. These conditions, she noted, could have significantly impacted navigation ability even for an experienced backcountry traveler. The autopsy, conducted by medical examiner Dr. Samuel Kwan on June 26, 2024, revealed several critical findings. Time of death was estimated at approximately 5-7 days after Madison's departure from the trailhead, placing it between June 12 and June 14, 2023. The cause of death was determined to be hypothermia, with contributing factors of dehydration and exhaustion. Toxicology results showed no presence of drugs, alcohol, or environmental toxins. The stomach contents indicated that Madison had not consumed food for at least 24 hours prior to death. Dr. Kwan's report included detailed observations about the condition of the remains. The subject's positioning suggests he sat down against the boulder, likely to rest, and succumbed to hypothermia in that position. The body then froze before significant decomposition could occur, effectively preserving it in the seated position. The upright appearance resulted from the gradual desiccation of tissues and the effects of gravity on the frozen remains over time, essentially creating a natural mummification in a standing posture. Of particular interest to investigators was a series of unusual marks documented on both hands. Dr. Kwan identified them as defensive wounds, specifically noting the palms and fingers exhibit multiple lacerations and contusions, consistent with gripping or handling sharp rock or similar abrasive materials with considerable force. These injuries occurred perimortem and suggest the subject was attempting to climb or hold onto rough surfaces shortly before death. The contents of Madison's pockets included a mechanical pencil, a small notebook containing navigational notes and coordinates, $47 in cash, and a folding knife. The notebook's final entry, barely legible and written with visibly shaky handwriting, read, "Can hear it moving. Too dark to see. Third night. Boulder provides some shelter. Must keep moving tomorrow." The entry was not dated, but forensic analysis of the pencil mark depth and pattern suggested it was written with the notebook braced against a hard surface, likely while the writer was in a compromised physical state. Detective Shepard's investigation expanded to include interviews with other hikers who had been in adjacent zones during the same period. Jeremy and Sandra Whitfield, a couple from Colorado who had been camping in Zone 20, approximately 5 miles from where Madison was eventually found, reported hearing unusual vocalizations on the night of June 11, 2023. Sandra Whitfield described the sounds as neither human nor animal, a sort of rhythmic clicking or chattering that seemed to move around our campsite. The couple had originally attributed the sounds to wind effects on the surrounding rock formations, but upon direct questioning, acknowledged they had never heard similar sounds during their previous 7 Denali expeditions. Park biologist Dr. Margaret Franklin reviewed audio recordings of all known wildlife in the region and concluded that the sounds described by the Whitfields did not match any documented species. While it's possible they heard a combination of natural sounds distorted by terrain and weather conditions, she noted, there is no known animal in the Denali ecosystem that produces the specific acoustic pattern they described. Analysis of the soil and rock samples collected from the site where Madison was found yielded additional questions. Geologist Martin Chen identified microscopic striations on the boulder's surface where the body had been leaning. These marks are consistent with something hard repeatedly scraping against the rock surface, Chen reported. The pattern suggests vertical movement, as if someone had been repeatedly sliding up and down against the boulder while wearing or carrying something with sufficient hardness to mark the granite. Chemical analysis of the striations found traces of aluminum oxide and synthetic fiber particles matching those in Madison's backpack frame. Perhaps most perplexing was the analysis of footprints and ground disturbance around the site. Forensic technician James Running Bear documented a pattern of compacted soil in a rough semicircle approximately 3 feet out from where Madison had been standing. The compression pattern indicates repeated movement in a consistent path, Running Bear reported. It's as if someone walked back and forth in the same arc multiple times, creating a packed-down trail in a half-moon shape with Madison at the center. No footprints other than those matching Madison's boots were identified, suggesting he had created the pattern himself. Examination of Madison's equipment revealed that his compass showed no mechanical defects, but displayed unusual magnetic deviation when tested. Instrument specialist Teresa Hammond noted that the needle exhibited a 27-degree eastward variation from true north, significantly different from the expected 18-degree variation for that geographic location. Something affected the magnetic calibration of this instrument, Hammond stated. This level of deviation would have substantially impacted navigation attempts, especially in low visibility conditions. The satellite phone, after careful thawing and technical examination, yielded additional information. While the battery had been completely depleted, forensic data extraction revealed that the device had been powered on 4 times after Madison's departure. The first activation occurred on June 9th at approximately 11:22 a.m., with the phone remaining on for 7 minutes before being powered down. The second occurred on June 10th at 6:17 p.m. for 12 minutes. The third activation was on June 11th at 9:04 a.m. for only 38 seconds. The final activation occurred on June 13th at 3:42 a.m., lasting 4 minutes and 12 seconds. No calls had been successfully placed during any of these activations, though the phone had searched for satellite connection each time. Technical specialist Edward Kim determined that the phone had been physically functional but unable to establish connection due to either terrain interference or incorrect orientation. The device logs show it was attempting to connect each time it was powered on, Kim reported. The user was trying to make a call, but couldn't establish the necessary satellite link. Kim further noted that the phone's GPS tracking function, which operated independently of the communication system, had recorded location data during each activation. This data showed Madison had traveled in a spiraling pattern over the 4 days, gradually moving eastward from his intended route. While covering significantly more ground than the direct distance would suggest, the GPS coordinates from the final activation placed Madison approximately 0.8 miles northwest of where his body was eventually found. This suggested he had continued moving after the last attempt to use the phone, despite what must have been increasingly dire physical condition. The straight-line distance between this final GPS point and the boulder where he was found would typically represent a 20-minute walk for a healthy hiker in good conditions. That Madison apparently took significantly longer to cover this distance indicated severe impairment. Dr. Elaine Harper's detailed examination of Madison's clothing identified several anomalies. The Gore-Tex jacket showed unusual wear patterns inconsistent with normal hiking movement. The abrasion marks on the back of the jacket show vertical striations, as if the wearer had been repeatedly sliding up and down against a rough surface while in an upright position, Harper noted. These marks align with the striations found on the boulder itself. Additionally, Harper documented a series of small punctures on the jacket's left sleeve, arranged in a pattern of 5 points, approximately 1 inch apart. These perforations penetrated all layers, including the thermal underlayer, yet there were no corresponding wounds on the arm beneath, she reported. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Detective Shepard interviewed Marcus Clayton, an experienced backcountry guide who had been leading a small group in Zone 18 during the period of Madison's disappearance. Clayton reported that his group had experienced compass malfunctions similar to those documented with Madison's equipment. All 3 compasses in our party were showing different readings, which is something I've never experienced in 22 years of guiding, Clayton stated. We relied on GPS for the remainder of the trip, but I remember being concerned enough to report it to rangers when we exited the backcountry. A review of park records confirmed Clayton had indeed mentioned the compass anomalies to Ranger Coleman on June 15, 2023. The information had been noted, but not flagged as significant, as it had come in the same day the search for Madison was initiated and attention was focused on the immediate rescue operation. When asked if he had noticed anything else unusual, Clayton reported that 2 members of his group had experienced what he termed auditory hallucinations during the night of June 12th, the same night the Whitfields reported unusual sounds. Clayton described his clients as hearing mechanical clicking sounds that seemed to move around the perimeter of our camp. He had attributed the phenomena to altitude effects and stress at the time. Park geologist Dr. Chen, upon learning of these reports, conducted electromagnetic field measurements at both the location where Madison was found and in zones 18 and 20, where the anomalous experiences had been reported. His findings indicated unusually high EMF readings in all 3 locations, measuring between 8.2 and 9.7 milligauss, compared to the baseline measurement of 0.5 milligauss in control areas of the park. These elevated readings could potentially affect compass function, Chen stated, but the source of the electromagnetic anomaly remains unclear. There are no known natural geological features in these areas that would generate fields of this intensity. The investigation's focus shifted when forensic analysis of soil samples taken from Madison's boots revealed an unexpected finding. Botanist Dr. Sarah Kingsley identified spores of a fungal species previously undocumented in Denali. The fungal structure appears most closely related to Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, commonly known as the zombie ant fungus, Kingsley reported. However, this variant shows significant genetic modifications that suggest either a previously unknown natural mutation or deliberate bioengineering. While emphasizing that the fungus was not known to affect humans, Kingsley noted that its presence was highly unusual and potentially significant. Toxicologist Dr. Veronica Patel conducted additional testing on tissue samples from Madison's remains, focusing specifically on the possibility of fungal infection or exposure to unusual environmental toxins. Her analysis detected trace amounts of ergot alkaloids in Madison's blood and tissue samples. These compounds are known to cause hallucinations, disorientation, and in some cases paranoia, Dr. Patel reported. The concentrations present were subclinical but could potentially have affected cognitive function, especially in conjunction with physical stress, dehydration, and sleep deprivation. The question of how these compounds entered Madison's system remained unanswered. Analysis of his remaining food supplies showed no contamination. Water samples taken from streams in the area where he was believed to have traveled tested negative for ergot or other psychoactive compounds. Dr. Patel theorized that Madison might have inadvertently ingested contaminated water from an unidentified source, or possibly inhaled spores while traversing an area where the unusual fungus was present. Detective Shepard consolidated these findings in her interim report dated July 15, 2024. The current evidence suggests that Daniel Madison became disoriented due to a combination of environmental factors, possible compass malfunction, and limited visibility conditions. His disorientation appears to have been compounded by exposure to an unidentified substance that affected his cognitive function. The physical evidence indicates he eventually reached the boulder where his remains were discovered, likely seeking shelter, and succumbed to hypothermia after an extended period of physical exertion and exposure. However, the report acknowledged significant unresolved questions, particularly regarding the unusual body position, the semicircular ground compression pattern, the defensive wounds on Madison's hands, and his final notebook entry referring to it moving. Shepard recommended continued investigation, particularly focused on identifying the source of the electromagnetic anomalies and determining whether the unusual fungal spores might be connected to Madison's disorientation. Park Superintendent Wilson authorized an expanded investigation, including ground surveys of the areas where electromagnetic anomalies had been detected. These surveys, conducted in August 2024, discovered no artificial structures or devices that might explain the readings. However, soil core samples revealed unusually high concentrations of magnetite and other ferromagnetic minerals in precisely delineated patterns that geologist Chen described as more consistent with deliberate placement than natural formation. The most disturbing development came when botanist Kingsley's continued analysis of the fungal samples yielded unexpected results. The genetic structure of this fungus includes sequences that don't match any known natural organism, she reported. Additionally, we've identified microscopic structures within the spores that appear to be nanoscale mechanical components. Kingsley emphasized that her findings were preliminary and would require verification by specialized laboratories, but noted that the presence of apparently artificial components within a biological organism raised significant concerns about potential bioengineering. The case file remains open, with quarterly surveys of the recovery site now standard procedure. Electromagnetic readings continue to fluctuate in the area, with no clear pattern or explanation. Park authorities have not restricted access to the zones in question, but have implemented enhanced monitoring protocols for hikers traversing these areas, including mandatory check-ins and GPS tracking. Emily Madison Reynolds authorized cremation of her brother's remains following completion of the forensic examination. In a statement released through her attorney, disappearance, she expressed gratitude for the closure provided by the discovery, but raised questions about the thoroughness of the original search operation. If Daniel was found less than 7 miles from his route, the statement read, we have to ask why the search perimeter wasn't expanded to include this area, especially given the well-known tendency of disoriented hikers to travel much further than expected. Park officials maintain that the search was conducted according to established protocols, with resources allocated based on statistical probability mapping and expert assessment. They acknowledge, however, that the unusual circumstances of Madison's death and the significant questions that remain unanswered have prompted a review of search procedures, particularly regarding the potential impact of unidentified environmental factors on hiker behavior and navigation. The boulder against which Daniel Madison's body was found has become an unofficial memorial site, despite park discouragement of such recognition. Hikers occasionally leave small stones in a growing cairn nearby. Rangers routinely remove these markers in accordance with leave no trace principles, but they invariably reappear. Park employees report that compasses often malfunction in the vicinity of the boulder, though official measurements show electromagnetic readings returning to normal levels in recent months. The final entry in the active investigation log, dated October 12, 2024, notes that night vision equipment deployed during a 24-hour surveillance operation recorded no unusual activities or anomalous sounds near the site. However, the equipment itself experienced 3 unexplained power failures between 2:14 a.m. and 4:37 a.m., despite having fully charged batteries. Each failure lasted precisely 7 minutes and 13 seconds before the system spontaneously reactivated. The investigation continues.